According to an FCC filing, Super Nintendo games are coming to the Switch soon. And even though it is technically a rumor, I don't doubt it for a second, because why would Super Nintendo games not be coming to the Switch's online service? Unfortunately though, the other rumor going around is not quite as pleasant. Apparently, instead of just adding Super Nintendo games to the existing service, Nintendo's gonna be rolling tiers out to make you pay extra for them. And if you ask my calcium deficient rump, I think that's a terrible idea. Keep watching to find out why. In 2006, the Wii offered digital games from every past Nintendo home console in history aside from the GameCube on day one. And wouldn't you know it, everybody loved it. Then when the Wii U came along, Nintendo went ahead and ruined it for everybody by charging a petty $1 to $2 to transfer purchases up from the Wii. And it's for that exact reason why everybody referred to that console as the PU. And not only that, but rather than just leaving the library alone the way it was, they started re-releasing everything all over from scratch. It was kind of fun checking the Wii's Virtual Console out every Tuesday morning, but we really didn't need to go through all this again, especially when you could just go into Wii mode and shop from the old catalog. You couldn't play games purchased this way from the Wii U's main menu because, well, Nintendo. But in my opinion, this was still a much better option. And apparently I wasn't the only person who wasn't happy with what became of the Virtual Console, because despite adding games from the Game Boy Advance and DS, it just wasn't as big of a hit on the Wii U or even 3DS as it was on the Wii. So once the Nintendo Switch came out, Nintendo went back to the drawing board on how they were going to capitalize on their retro games going forward. Because they didn't want to let people transfer games up to newer consoles, but nobody was willing to buy them again every time a new one came out. So what did the above-average sized den come up with? Well, instead of selling games individually, they decided to bundle them all together with a subscription service, kinda like Netflix. Which nobody really wanted, but 10 million people decided to get it anyway just to play Switch games online. Much like previous Nintendo consoles, the online service only offers the bare-ass basic options, and if you use voice chat, then your cell phone's gonna have to act as a middleman. People hated this even back when it was free, but rather than making their online games run better, Nintendo decided to start charging money while leaving it exactly the same. But to be fair, the below-oversized den did try to soften the blow by adding NES games as a bonus. Or, depending on how you look at it, they were holding online play hostage with a ransom demanding that you buy the NES catalog. No matter how you slice it though, the service is underwhelming, but if I'm being honest, I can't say that $20 a year is really that big of a deal, all things considered. I mean, it is frustrating as hell knowing how easily Nintendo can make it like 1,000 times better, but they do offer some perks like overpriced NES Joy-Cons and, Tetris 69? Okay, so the perks aren't all that great, but it's still less than $2 a month, and besides, we're eventually gonna get games from the Super Nintendo and 64, and hopefully Game Boy, GameCube, and Wii titles as well. But if the rumors of additional consoles being tied into separate tiers, then Nintendo's gonna get Hell Week all rolled into one night up in here. And I wish I could say that I'd be surprised if they didn't see that coming, but sadly, the more I think about it, the more I could actually picture it being true. I mean, Nintendo's got a harder time figuring the internet out than I do figuring out how to repair my broken marriage with my beautiful ex-wife Chili. Honey, if you're watching this, and I know that you are, then please let me back into the house, and I promise I won't question why the maintenance guy needs to look at the fridge 5 times a week anymore. Anyway, now that I've got all that out of the way, if there really are tiers coming, then Nintendo probably assumes that since over 10 million people are subscribed to their service right now, that the NES games must have had something to do with it. But I think it's ridiculously obvious that nobody's paying $20 a year for random 30-year-old NES games 2 to 3 times a month. I mean, maybe they could consider the NES catalog a selling point if they were offering games better than volleyball, but I truly believe in my heart of asses that there can't be more than like 100 people subscribing solely for the NES games, and I wouldn't be surprised if literally nobody was. So I don't have any idea why Nintendo's wasting money licensing third-party games, let alone ones that nobody even cares about. I'd be lying if I pretended I don't play Mario 3 or Blaster Master on occasion, but all I'm saying is that they're definitely not what people are subscribing for. People just want to play Switch games like Smash, Splatoon, or Mario Maker online, and if there's gonna be a price increase, then there needs to be things like dedicated servers. I mean, it would be pretty cool to play the original Mario Kart or other two-player Super Nintendo games online, but it'd be pretty insulting to even pay $5 more a year for it. And when I say $5, I'm really just being optimistic. We all know Nintendo's probably gonna charge like 10. But if I say any more, then I just run the risk of dating this video. I'm not completely against Nintendo doing tiers per se, but if they think $20 a year is worth it for NES games, then let's just say I'm pessimistic about what they think the rest of their consoles will be worth. If the deal was like $30 or even $40 a year for Super Nintendo, 64, GameCube, Wii, Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance games, then I don't know about you, but I think I'd probably cave as long as the libraries weren't as phoned in as the NES games are. It's just that as much as I love Nintendo's ability to make the best games ever, I have almost no faith in how they handle anything to do with the internet. So my fear is that Super Nintendo games are gonna end up costing $10 more a year. And while I'm sure we're gonna get all the key first-party games like Super Mario World and Home Improvement, they're probably gonna be sprinkled out slower than my dad's cognitive tempo. Before we get all the Super Metroids and Yoshi's Islands, we're probably gonna have to deal with Pilot Wings and Wario's Woods first. And given how stingy Square is, you can just go ahead and forget about all those RPGs right now aside from Super Mario RPG. The bottom line is that while I'd love to play games from other Nintendo consoles on the Switch besides the NES, I think Nintendo's priorities are in the wrong place if that's what they're focusing on. Especially if that's all they're gonna add to higher tiers. Even if it might not always be on a portable console, there's already plenty of ways to play old Nintendo games as it is. But one thing we don't have right now is a competent way to play current Nintendo Switch games on the internet. So rather than trying to figure out ways to use retro games to milk Switch owners, Nintendo ought to invest in things like dedicated servers and controllers with headphone jacks. And if $20 a year is not enough money for Nintendo to provide an online service that's remotely comparable to Xbox Live or even the PSN, then fine. Charge us more money and use classic games to soften the blow. But if Nintendo thinks the disdain towards NES reveals on YouTube's bad, then they're gonna be in for a rude awakening if they start rolling tears out for 2 to 3 Super Nintendo games every month. Especially if they're as mediocre as the NES selections. Anyway, what do you think about Nintendo rolling tears out to play games from their other consoles? Would you be willing to upgrade, or are you with me in thinking they need to improve the online play above anything else? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll try my goddamnedest to respond to everybody. But let me tell you, if Nintendo really wants a better online service, then they need to consult today's patrons of the day, Curry Chicken Man and Michael D. If you want to be badasses like these two, then consider supporting FU Game Crew on Patreon for loot boxes in the mail and other wacky rewards. And if you want to make a cameo, then send pictures or videos of you rocking any FU Game Crew merch like these legendary human beings you see before you. As always, like and share this video anywhere on the internet to help this channel grow. And if you want to prove that you're not down with registered sex offenders, then go ahead and press the subscribe button if you haven't already. My name's Cameron, all one word, and I'll be back with more videos soon.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.